What's up YouTube? So today I want to talk about 5 interesting tips for sound design. Let's dive in and have a look. So tip number 1 is to use vocal samples as wavetables. I've chosen to use Serum in this example just because it's so easy to drag and drop samples directly into Serum. So here I've got a vocal sample that I've loaded up as a wavetable. It's from the Zenosonics vocal pack. I have done a video on that. You can actually just zoom in and see what exactly the sample is called here. It's Zenosonics vocal pack Out of This World. I've done this in a previous, I think I outlined it in a live stream, but I wanted to kind of just do it in a little bit more detail for you guys.
Out of this world. Out of this world. Out of this world. Out of this world. Out of this world.
So another cool thing here, you don't necessarily have to just play through the sample as a kind of vocal sound. A little quick tip is that the opening track on my last album that I released, Reality Science, almost all of the leads and synth sounds were actually created this way. You know, the more vocal stuff was being played through using an LFO, like the traditional way like this. But then some of the stuff was just, you know, more static sounds of positions of the wavetable or doing kind of modulation clips. You know, when you hold shift in Serum's LFO, it allows you to kind of draw these steps. So it's a cool way of creating these kind of like rhythmic grooves using a sample. So I actually just want to put in a long note here so I can show you a couple of examples alongside a kick and bass. So the next quick tip is to use samples as modulators. So I'm going to be using Phase Plant for this just because it's the easiest to get this going, but you can get it going with Serum in a kind of tricky way, loading up the sample as a noise oscillator. But anyway, what we can do is let's just load in an analog, set this to a sine wave, then we can go ahead and add a sampler. So I've already got a couple of samples loaded up here. Okay, it's not the same one, but it can work. So what I want to do is I want to leave this sampler outside of this group so it's not actually going into the output. We can actually turn the semitones of this guy down a little bit. And essentially what we want to do is we want to send this output as a modulator to something like the phase to create phase modulation, but we're using the modulator signal is a sample. So it's a little bit chaotic, but what we can do is we can use a loop marker to find a kind of nice point. And this creates a kind of like almost natural, organic sounding FM type of sound. And then by just changing where these loops are, you're vastly changing the timbre of that sound. Okay, so the next quick tip is delay modulation. What this is essentially changing the speeds of your delays to create interesting effects. So what I want to do here is let's just create a 16th pattern here, all the way like this, and I'm just going to use faceplant because it's already loaded, and let's just go ahead and put in a noise, something nice and sharp. So let's turn the slope all the way to the left hand side, and we can turn the sustain and decay down. It's almost like hi-hat plucky sound. And now we want to go ahead and put a delay on here. So that's just giving you the idea of what's happening there. So actually a little quick tip is that the resonator effect by kilohertz is actually, it is a delay, but it's kind of tuned to these frequencies. So as you see, if you turn this kind of parameter down, it gets to below C1 or 0, A0, and then turns into hertz. So check this out. So the next quick tip is stretching. So don't be afraid to time stretch your samples and stuff to kind of listen to, you know, how destructive the different time stretching algorithms in your DAW can be. You know, one of the interesting things, which still ceases to amaze me how few people know this, is that kind of like old school effect that they use to create these like atmospheres and stuff is a lot of the time is used by just you know, different time stretching algorithms really brutally applied to different samples. So obviously I've got this vocal sample that we were going through in the as wavetables and stuff like that. So here what I want to do is I just want to switch over to Cubase's time stretch cursor, and what I'm going to do is just stretch it out all the way. So at the moment I've got Elastic Pro time algorithm enabled. So at the top here, you'll see it over here. So that creates this kind of sound. So yeah, Elastic Pro Time, though, I think it's the one that's usually by default, kind of gives it this kind of weird granular kind of sound, and it's really cool for pads and that kind of thing. So I guess this is kind of gonna kind of go hand in hand with the next quick tip, which is parallel effects. So for this, I want to pop in an instance of Snap Heap. So what I like to do is I like to find out what sort of pitch the sound is. So what I'll do is I'll enable a reverb, and I'll put it onto kind of huge maximum settings, large decay, large size, and dry wet on full. And then I'll put a tuner afterwards. So it's picked up that our sample is, you know, when we've stretched it and we've put on these effects, it kind of sounds somewhere between, you know, C, or it's like resonating with C, between C and G, which is the fifths of each other, I believe. So it's going to pick up either or. Which is not a problem, because they will both be in key if we just find the root. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that correctly. So what I want to do here is I just want to adjust this fine tune until it's sitting closer to the middle here. So now we can go and transpose this to fit to the root of our track. So I think -6 would make that F sharp, which is what the root of the kick and bass is, or +6. Let's just see which sounds better. Okay, got that sounding pretty cool. So what is a parallel effect and what is a serial effect? So a serial effect is, let's say for example, I put a filter on here and then I put a distortion on here. What's going to happen is it's going to run the audio through the filter and then out, and then through the distortion and then out. So it's going to go filter and then distortion in the chain, 1 and then 2. So a parallel effect, which you enable by switching on this over here, and you'll see this thick line turns into a thin line. What this is the audio comes in, and then it sends to both of these simultaneously, and then out into the next serial bus, and so on and so forth. So here, for example, we can apply, let's just delete both of these. We can apply 2 filters. And let's say, for example, we put on 2 bandpass filters. What's going to happen here is it's going to play the audio and it's going to basically have a duplicate going through 2 channels, and it's going to process them in parallel, sort of simultaneously. and then we're going to get here the result of the mix of those two sounds. So what I want to do here is let's just put on a macro and set the macro to control the cutoff. Like this. Let's just say 60% on both sides. But now we want to set the actual frequency of both of them offset slightly. So let's say about 450 Hertz on the one, and let's say like 800 Hertz on the other. So something really cool that you can do with the parallel effects in Snapheap is you could have some kind of pan situation going on with the parallels. So let's send it through these two bandpass filters. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to duplicate them again. So what's going to happen here is, and we can actually just offset these poles ever so slightly. So it's about 100 and something Hertz, 200 and something Hertz, 300 and something Hertz, and 400 and something Hertz. And now this macro still controls the the offset of all of these. So what's going to happen here is we've got a stereo signal going in parallel with these two. And then again, it's going into parallel of these two, but then we're panning it separately. So we're going to get a kind of tricky stereo effect happening, like a stereo filter. Another really cool use of this trick is to create more of a paddy kind of texture. So I'm just going to disable the other tracks and let's just parallel a couple of these. So we've got now 3 layers that are being paralleled. And a couple of the cool effects in here to do this type of thing are reverser, resonator, frequency shifter is also really cool, although this can get a little bit chaotic. Awesome, that pretty much sums up this episode. I hope you enjoyed those quick tips. Let me know what you think in the comments. A big thanks to IDM Mag, proud supporters of the dance music scene and my channel. Most of these presets I don't think I'll be able to upload because there's samples involved that I believe you got to pay for. So except the one with the white noise and the delays and stuff. So I'll be uploading that to my Patreon. If you want to know what that's all about, check out the link that's going to be on the screen right now. As always, if you like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. See you guys next time.